These clever techniques were born out of necessity during a time when survival wasn't just an occasional concern, it was a daily challenge. What's truly remarkable is that many of these methods are still relevant in our modern world, proving that sometimes ancient wisdom is timeless. Have you ever wondered how people managed to preserve food without refrigerators or build shelters with limited tools? Or how they stayed safe and healthy despite the absence of modern technology? You'll be amazed to discover the simple yet effective ways medieval folks tackled these challenges. From fire-starting methods to ingenious ways to conserve resources, these survival tricks have stood the test of time and may even inspire you to adopt some of them. If you're as fascinated by history and survival as we are, make sure you stick around to the end of the video. And hey, before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got plenty more fascinating content coming your way, and you won't want to miss it. 1. Fire, starting with flint and steel. When you think of survival, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For me, it's fire. That one glowing ember can mean the difference between freezing to death and staying alive. And back in medieval times, people knew this truth better than anyone. They didn't have lighters or waterproof matches, but they had something just as effective: flint and steel. The technique is actually simple, though it takes skill to master. You take a piece of carbon steel and strike it against flintstone, a hard, quartz-like rock. When struck just right, the collision shaves off a tiny bit of the steel, and the friction ignites it into a spark. That spark, small as it is, can land on a bit of tinder and give birth to a life-saving ember. But not just any tinder will do. Medieval folks were clever. They used materials like char cloth, cotton fabric that's been heated in a low-oxygen container, dried fungi like amadou, fibrous bark, moss, and even byproducts from flax processing. These caught sparks easily and held an ember long enough to build into a flame. Once they had that glowing ember, they'd nestle it into something even drier: straw, grass, linen, and gently blow until it burst into a flame. To them, fire was more than a way to stay warm. It was survival in its purest form. It meant heat, light, and food. It gave them the means to cook, to preserve meat with smoke, to boil water, and even to produce steam to clean wounds. During long winters and dark nights, fire was a symbol of life itself. There's something I love about how fire starting wasn't just a skill. It was a community responsibility. In many villages, people would share glowing coals between households. If your fire went out, you didn't start from scratch. You went to your neighbor, who gave you a coal to reignite your hearth. That glowing coal wasn't just heat. It was connection, trust, and mutual survival. Even now, flint and steel kits are still popular among survivalists and campers, and for good reason. They don't run out of fuel like lighters, and they work even when damp. Practicing this technique has taught me a new level of respect for the resourcefulness of our ancestors. Fire might seem easy in the modern world, but when all else fails, medieval methods still hold up. 2. Earth ovens and clay cooking. Now, let's talk about one of my favorite survival hacks: earth ovens. It sounds primitive, and it is, but in the best way. It's the kind of cooking method that takes you right back to the roots of human ingenuity, and yes, it still absolutely works today. Medieval folks just didn't have cast iron skillets or propane grills, but they knew how to feed themselves well using nothing but dirt, rocks, and fire. They'd dig pits in the earth, line the bottom with stones, and light a fire on top of those stones to get them blazing hot. Once the stones were hot enough, they'd remove the fire, place food, wrapped in leaves, bark, or clay, on the heated stones, then cover the pit with soil to trap the heat. It's the original slow cooker, and the results are mouth-watering. The brilliance of this method lies in its simplicity and efficiency. The residual heat from the stones would cook food slowly and evenly, sealing in moisture and flavor. Clay wrapping was especially clever. When hardened, the clay created a natural seal, locking in juices while making it easy to remove skin, scales, or tough fibers from whatever was cooked inside. Fish, root vegetables, game, everything turned tender and smoky. What's more, these ovens didn't require any metal tools. That's a huge plus in a survival scenario where modern conveniences are nowhere in sight. And because the fires were buried, they produced minimal smoke and light, an excellent strategy during times of conflict when you didn't want to advertise your location. But beyond the practicality, there was something deeply communal about earth ovens. In many medieval villages, these pits weren't just personal cooking spots, they were shared. During feast days or harvest festivals, people would gather to cook together, trading ingredients, recipes, and stories. It was cooking, but it was also bonding. And here's the kicker. Earth ovens are still used today in many indigenous communities around the world. Even survivalists build them for off-grid cooking. I tried it once during a camping trip, and I'll be honest. It was one of the most rewarding meals I've ever made. No timer, no gadgets, just raw nature and a little patience. Sipo. If you're ever in a bind, remember, the earth can be your oven. You just have to know how to use it. 3. Natural refrigeration. In our world of freezers and fridges, it's easy to forget how much of a miracle cold storage really is. People. They figured it out long before electricity, and their methods are not only morally smart, they're still totally usable if you ever find yourself living off the grid or during a long power outage. Let's start with root cellars. These underground storage rooms were dug into hillsides or beneath homes, insulated with straw, leaves, and even clay walls. The idea was simple. Underground temperatures remain fairly consistent year-round, staying cool in summer and above freezing in winter. Perfect for storing root vegetables, dried herbs, and even jars of preserved food. But that's not all. People also buried clay or stone jars in shaded areas to keep things cool. The dense material and the Earth's natural insulation helped maintain a lower internal temperature. Butter was wrapped in soaked cloth and stored in breezy places. Eggs, they were submerged in lime water to prevent spoilage. And milk, that went into ceramic containers, dropped into cool wells or streams to keep from turning sour. I was amazed the first time I tried submerging butter in water wrapped with muslin cloth. It stayed fresh for days without refrigeration. The secret was in evaporation and airflow. Medieval people didn't have thermometers, but they had a deep understanding of how temperature, humidity, and airflow affected food. They even knew how to cure dry goods. Grains, nuts, and herbs were tied into bundles and hung in elevated places where dry air could circulate freely. It kept moisture and mold at bay. It's a method I now use in my own pantry for drying herbs from the garden. These natural refrigeration tricks prove how incredibly observant and resourceful our ancestors were. They didn't rely on machines. They relied on the rhythms of nature. And honestly, there's a freedom in that. When you know how to store your food without depending on electricity, you're no longer held hostage by modern systems. That's true self-reliance. Today, homesteaders and preppers alike are returning to these methods. And for good reason. Power outages happen. Emergencies come up. And when they do, knowing how to preserve food the old-fashioned way can make a world of difference. 4. Water filtering with sand and cloth. If there's one thing I've learned about survival, it's that clean water is non-negotiable. You can go weeks without food, but only days without water, and even fewer if it's contaminated. That's why I'm always fascinated by how medieval folks managed to stay alive without modern filtration systems. Their methods might look primitive, but they were surprisingly effective. One of the simplest techniques involved straining water through tightly woven cloth. This step alone removed visible debris, like twigs, insects, and sediment. Not perfect, of course, but it was a crucial first layer. But the real magic happened with their use of natural filtration layers: gravel, sand, and charcoal. They'd construct filters using hollow logs, clay pots, or dugout pits, layering coarse gravel at the bottom, followed by finer sand, and topping it off with activated charcoal, often made from charred wood. Water poured through this setup would emerge much clearer and safer. The charcoal helped absorb toxins and bacteria, while the sand and gravel removed smaller particles. No pumps, no chemicals, just gravity and time. What really amazes me is how they even went a step further. Medieval folks knew rainwater was a clean source, so they'd collect it in barrels or stone cisterns. And for added protection, they'd infuse the water with antibacterial herbs like yarrow or thyme. These weren't random choices either. Those herbs have proven antimicrobial properties even today. I tried this method once on a wilderness trip, just to see if it really worked. I layered a plastic bottle, cut in half, with cloth, charcoal from a campfire, clean sand, and gravel. The difference was night and day. Murky stream water turned into something I'd actually consider drinking. Of course, I boiled it afterward, but even without heat, that setup was a lifesaver. In today's world, sand filters are still used across the globe. In disaster zones, remote villages, and refugee camps. They're cheap, effective, and sustainable. The technology might seem medieval, but it's still saving lives. That alone tells you just how genius it really is, using fat for light and heat. Let's talk about something you probably wouldn't think of as a survival hero, animal fat. Sounds gross, right? But let me tell you, in a world without electricity or central heating, tallow, rendered animal fat, is a true jack-of-all-trades. The medieval folks knew it, and after trying it myself, I get why they relied on it so heavily. First off, they used tallow to make candles. Not the fancy scented ones we have today, but basic, reliable light sources. They dip a wick into melted fat over and over again, building up layers until they had a functioning candle. Sometimes they'd use rushlights, stalks of plants dipped in tallow and then burned. The light might flicker and smell a bit, but it worked. When the sun went down, tallow kept their homes lit and gave them a few more hours of productivity, storytelling, or just warmth around the hearth. But tallow wasn't just for light, it provided heat too. Some households used small clay lamps or tallow burners to generate enough warmth to survive chilly nights. In colder regions, people even mixed tallow into clay to make slow-burning heat sources. It was an accessible, renewable form of energy when firewood was scarce or too wet to burn efficiently. What blew my mind is how versatile this stuff really is. Tallow was also used to waterproof boots and cloaks. It kept tools from rusting. It even served as emergency food. Yes, you read that right. When times got desperate, people would eat tallow for calories and sustenance. It's basically pure fat. So while it won't win any culinary awards, it keeps your body fueled. Modern preppers and homesteaders still swear by it. I've rendered tallow myself after butchering game, and let me tell you, it's incredibly useful. I've made tallow candles that burned longer than some store-bought ones. I've used it to season cast iron and condition leather. When the power went out during a winter storm last year, I lit a few homemade tallow candles and instantly appreciated their warmth and soft glow. Tallow might not be glamorous, but it's old-world resilience in its purest form. It turns waste into wealth, darkness into light, and hardship into opportunity. That's the kind of survival mindset I want in my toolbox. 6. Signal fires and smoke codes. Now, here's a survival tactic that feels like something out of a spy novel. Signal fires and smoke codes. Back in medieval times, communication was a serious challenge. No cell phones, no radios, not even a reliable postal system. But they found a way to send urgent messages across long distances using fire and smoke. And the coolest part, it still works today. The basic technique was straightforward. People would pre-build fire platforms or pits at strategic points, hilltops, towers, cliffs. These were kept ready to light at a moment's notice. When danger approached, like invaders, bandits, or even natural disasters, someone would light the fire, and the smoke would rise for miles. Other lookout points would see it and light their own fires, creating a chain reaction of alerts across the region. But they didn't stop at just one fire. They developed specific codes. One fire might mean a nearby threat, while 2 or 3 could signal larger or more urgent dangers. The direction of the smoke, its height, and even the intervals between lighting fires carried meaning. It was like an ancient version of Morse code, but with flames. This method wasn't unique to Europe either. Indigenous peoples across Africa, the Americas, and Asia used similar tactics. The Great Wall of China, for instance, was outfitted with watchtowers that used smoke signals to warn of enemy movements. It was fast, low-tech, and incredibly effective. I gave this a try during a backwoods camping trip with a friend. We set up 2 stations about a mile apart with dry kindling and damp moss for smoke and agreed on a few basic signals. It was shockingly effective. The second I lit the fire, a thick plume of smoke curled up, and within a few minutes I saw our return signal. This kind of communication still has its place today. In wilderness survival scenarios or off-grid living, especially in wide open or mountainous areas, smoke signals can be a powerful way to call for help or coordinate with others. If cell towers go down, a column of smoke might be the fastest way to get attention. It's also just empowering to know that you can communicate with something as basic as fire and smoke. That's real-world resilience. The kind that doesn't require batteries, satellites, or subscriptions. Just knowledge and a spark. 7. Using herbal medicine for healing. One of the most impressive survival tricks that medieval people used, which still works today, was their deep understanding and use of herbal medicine. I have always found it fascinating how our ancestors relied on the plants around them, not just for food, but as powerful tools for healing. With no access to modern pharmacies or synthetic drugs, medieval communities turned to the abundant resources of nature to treat a variety of illnesses and injuries. They didn't just randomly pick plants and hope for the best. These were tried and true remedies, passed down through generations, with careful knowledge of how to identify, harvest, prepare, and administer each herb. For example, travelers and healers of the time often used garlic for its potent antimicrobial properties. Thyme and sage were used to address respiratory issues, helping people fight off colds and congestion. Medieval solutions to common problems we still experience today. Comfrey was another staple, known to reduce swelling and speed up the healing of wounds, while plantain leaves were used to draw out toxins from stings or bites. Nettle, a plant many of us might overlook or avoid, was highly valued as a treatment for joint pain, anemia, and skin conditions. What amazes me the most is how much modern medicine owes to this ancient knowledge. Many of the plants medieval people relied on remain the foundation for some of today's pharmaceutical discoveries. For instance, the salicylic acid in willow bark, which they often utilized for pain relief, eventually led to the creation of aspirin. This connection between their practices and modern medicine highlights the genius of their methods. Even in our high-tech world, herbal remedies have not lost their relevance. While we have hospitals and medications at our fingertips, survival situations might strip us of these conveniences. Such knowledge becomes vital if you're in the wilderness or living off the grid. Knowing how to use plants to treat wounds, infections, and illnesses could mean the difference between life and death. It's a reminder that some of the simplest solutions often come from nature itself. The ingenuity of medieval herbal practices goes beyond mere survival. It teaches us to respect and rely on the natural world in ways we may have forgotten. Their wisdom, grounded in centuries of observation and trial, remains a valuable resource to this day. In conclusion, the survival tricks of medieval people showcase the incredible resourcefulness and ingenuity of our ancestors. These time-tested techniques remind us of the power of self-sufficiency and our enduring connection to the natural world. By learning and applying these forgotten skills, we not only preserve a part of history, but also equip ourselves with practical knowledge that could prove invaluable in any situation. Their wisdom continues to inspire and serve as a testament to human adaptability and resilience.